Hello and welcome back to the Project 7890. In this episode we're going to talk about some of the modifications I've made to the bike since I've had it from new. A little bit of background, I've had this bike since 2019, so it's almost 6 years, and in those 6 years I've learned what works and what doesn't work. So if you're interested in doing some modifications on your 790 or 890, stick around and we'll go through what I've done. Okay, thanks for sticking around. To my friends, this bike's known as Trigger's Broom. It's a UK reference, you maybe have to Google it to find out what it is. Basically, this bike is not what it was originally. In 2019 I bought the bike new, and since then it's constantly evolved with changing stuff. It's also had a road traffic collision, so there's a whole new front end on it. I've also broken a swing arm, so it's had a new back end on it. I've changed out the suspension. I've changed multiple parts on it, and it is basically now hardly anything on it is OEM. In the last few episodes you'll have seen the fact that I did an engine swap on this bike, so it's now running an 890 Duke R engine. Everything's running fine. If you want to see that series, click up here. It'll take you to the playlist and that will show you what we've done. There's 6 or so episodes of it. Okay, just to go through, obviously you've heard me, I've said I've owned the bike since new 2019. One of the first things I ordered was the rear rack. This rack is by Perron Moto, who are based out in Eastern Europe somewhere. I think it's, is it Slovak? Is it a Slovakian, I think, company? If you Google them, you'll find them. Really good service, delivered quickly. This rack's been bounced off the ground a few times. It holds quite big bags and things like that. It's currently sitting with a Krieger OS, I think it's an OS 6. Which just contains first aid kit tools and stuff, so that's kind of what's usually on the bike day to day, and that's kind of held in well. You can see that it does have an option. There's a couple of bars here to have your grab handles here, but to be honest, because the grab handles come around this way, I was always worried about catching them on something, so that's why I've taken them off. But generally this is pretty robust, and you've got plenty of places to grab it if you need to lift the bike out of anywhere, which has been happened on occasions. So that was one of the first modifications. Okay, next up is kind of the handlebars. Big thing for me was to change these out fairly quickly after getting the bike new. I swapped over to a Renthal flat bar. This is 827 bend. I think it's known as the Villapoto bend, but the main reason is it has a big control area, so you can run controls. I think it's 222mm either side, so you've got plenty of room to add extra bits, especially if you're putting in a torque Bluetooth controller here for maybe a big tablet in the future. You definitely need plenty of control services. Attached to them obviously are the de Rigueur bark busters. These are just a standard fit tapered bar mounts. You can see they've been dropped on a few times. They're pretty robust. A little bit of emery paper cleans them up again, and they've been on the bike now probably 4 or 5 years. Vanache damper mount. I want to raise the bars up a little bit, so I thought, right, we'll do that. And at the same time I invested in a Scots damper. The reason being is that when we're riding some TET trails, I was expecting to need something a bit more than the standard damper, although that's maybe not the case, but it was a bit of bling. I think the dollar rate was quite good at the time when I bought it, so I got that direct from the States, and I worked out cheaper than buying it from the UK, even with taxes, etc. Above it is old school kind of quad lock mount. I haven't gone for the wireless charger, mainly because that's the only USB port on the bike, so as opposed to a phone charger, I can stick anything in there and charge it in my tank bike, so I tend to do that rather than the wireless charging, because the wireless charging literally limits you just to the phone, so that's why I do that. As we go across, usual bling, KTM bling you get off the power parts thing. This is a map switch for the old engine. Basically it's not really in use at the moment, it's just still fitted because I haven't decided what to do with the power commander. Going back here, obviously double take mirrors. I did have the older ones, but I just felt too long. They look like giraffe's ears, I think. But however, when I got these were a little short, so I put the extra mounts that come with them. So they're all mounted standard. It'd be quite nice to get these black anodized or something like that, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. Up front on the nav, it's the basic Garmin XT. I've had this since they basically came out. I had a 595 before it, but I just wanted something that could show tracks. And as you can see, the maps on are all kind of there, so you can access your tracks, etc. We all know that. but that's really it. Good thing about this, you can tune into your music. You can control it from there, but I just tend to have the map running in the background just to see where I am and what I'm doing. But that's really it. Other mods are this bike does have that mode. Hold on a sec. Which one is it? It does have rally mode on it, so really handy when you get the chance to ride off road. You can obviously get more control of your traction, throttle settings, etc. Throttle wise on this, I tend to use in rally mode off-road or street. The rally throttle is a little aggressive. It ramps up really quickly, and if you're going through bumpy terrain, you do struggle a bit to hang on to the bike. So that's really it for controls. I don't really know what else is there. Oh yeah, sorry, brake levers. I've got wee hands, so I invested in some Raximo levers earlier on, but I felt the Raximo levers were a bit flimsy. They're like an alloy, Chinese manufactured, but they were TÜV approved, came from Germany originally, but I had them on for a few years. But since I've got the RG ones, Raid Garage ones, they are basically almost an exact replica of the OEM shape here, and then just a shortened lever, but really, really nice lever. And obviously the brake lever is the same as well. And they fit onto the original clamps and stuff, or the original clamps, the original pivots. So this bit is OEM, and the actual bit you actually buy from Raid Garage is actually only the main lever bit. So it means it's all OEM, it all works fine. There's no compression of the grip and things like that. Speaking of grips, that's 6 years use, 35,000 miles ish on a KTM heated grip, so they do last fairly well if you don't chuck it down the road or throw it on the floor. The throttle's less worn, obviously, because it's what I call it. Or it's less worn because obviously it twists a bit and things like that. However, when you buy these new, they are a wee bit rattly, and you can see that one's quite solid that way. So what I've done with the throttle on this, I've used a UK company called Race Torx, TORQ, I think is how they're pronounced, but I'll maybe put a link in the description. They supply just little 3D printed plastic shims. You've maybe seen them on the internet. Some people do alloy ones and things like that. But they really are good. They totally take the slack out of the throttle here, because when you get these new, it goes click, 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 click. I might have a video of that I can add in, but that takes all the slack out. So that's what I've done to my controls. So that's really a walkthrough. If you need to know anything more, just drop a thing in the comment, but you'll see that the bike's basically, it's set up for me with wee hands, and the fact that I like a straighter bar, and as you can see the bars are fairly straight. The OEM bar, if you just stand by, I'll get the OEM bar. So I'll try my best to sort of show you the difference in the bend. So that's the OEM bar, they're more or less parallel with it, and you can see how much it kicks back. Some people that might suit, however, I prefer a bit of a straighter bar. It's probably a couple of degrees in there, but it does feel very, very different, and also puts your weight over the front wheel a bit more. Okay, just one thing I've mentioned with my Garmin mount, I've obviously got a Vinash GPS mount that's in here. Obviously Vinash were one of the first people to do the CNC'd aluminium mount for the 790 platform at the time. So that's been there since, geez, I can't remember, I think that was my first mount. In fact, no, I'll tell a lie, I did use an SW Motec mount, which was the metal, press metal one, which was absolutely useless. No offense, SW Motec, but this holds the sat nav absolutely solid, and it's bolted in, obviously using the standard mount. You'll have seen maybe a little bit of paracord there. That's glued onto the back of the sat nav. I'll bring it around the other side actually just to show you. Some people were worried about sat navs falling up, but I've just stuck like an electrical kind of cable tie holder thing for like running cables with a sticky pad. So I've just stuck that on with a bit of paracord, just in case it ever bounced off road. But I do have a locking pin here with the Motomines mount for the Garmin, which is just like a special key which locks it in, and that holds it pretty solid. It means you cannot take it off an opportunist thief type thing. Maybe if you stop at a restaurant or whatever when you're out on the road, a cafe, petrol station, all of the above, it holds it pretty solid as well. So that's the mount for the sat nav. Okay, so that's the modifications I've made to some of the bike. We'll take you through some more in the next episode. So hopefully, if you've got any questions, let me know. I see that some of the 790 adventures that are going for a great deal at the minute with lots of KTM dealers. So if you have just bought a new one and you're not quite sure where you're at with it, don't be afraid to put something in the comments, ask a question. I've known these bikes for 6 years. I've had it in pieces and had it back together again, so I know them pretty intimately. Ask me a question, I'll help you as best I can. Other than that, keep riding. Hello and welcome back to the Project 7890. My name is John. This is my 2019 KTM 790 Adventure. I've owned this bike for the last 6 years and I've done multiple modifications on it. This series of videos is going through those modifications to help you make a decision about what you want to change about your bike. I've also done a Duke 890R engine swap on this bike. If you haven't seen that series, click on this card in the corner and that'll take you to a full playlist with about 6 or so episodes detailing how I did it and why I did it. Also, if you haven't seen the first episode of this series about the modifications, click the link now in the corner. That'll take you to episode 1, where we talk about the controls on the bike. But right now, we're going to talk about protection. Everybody needs protection before a big ride. So let's get into it. Okay, folks, as I mentioned before in the previous video, one of the first things I put on was the Barkbuster handguards. As for protection, mainly protects your hands if you hit trees and stuff like that, but basically I use it more for if I drop the bike. This takes all the brunt of the abuse, basically. It tends to always go down its left side for some reason, but that's one part of the thing. These things are worth their weight in gold, to be honest. The plastic ones on the bike are okay, but if you're going to go out somewhere where you expect them to drop it, it's worthwhile investing in those. Next main bit of protection is always talked about on the 790s is the bash guard. Obviously, the standard one is pretty flimsy. It's very thin, it bends easily, and it's only mounted to the bottom of the sump with 2 anti-vibration mounts. They're literally push-in mounts with 2 screws. So literally, if you get a whack, the whole plate will just drop off. It doesn't bolt in at all. What we have here is the Ian Chappell bash guard, which sadly Ian passed away a few years ago and they're no longer made. So they're kind of worth their weight in gold. Really well engineered 4mm aluminium plate. And as you can see, they're well ventilated at the front. Got the 790 in there. I am looking for an 890 on the second-hand market one, if I can find one. But otherwise, really robust. Mounts on the same genuine factory mounts at the front, and then it does have a mount at the rear here, which actually goes all the way across between the 2 sets of foot pegs, so it's really a robust mount. You can stand on this. It's taken abuse, it's slidden over rocks in Spain, it's done all kinds of stuff, and when you hit a rock, you know it's hit a rock because there's a massive dung of it. So that's the bash guard. Obviously other bash guards have been evolved since this one came out a few years ago. The wraparound ones, which come all the way up around the tanks, are a good investment. I think KTM make one. Outback Motortech have one. I think SW Motec have one as well. There's a few other manufacturers, but they're probably circa £350, £400 each. So if you can pick one up in the second-hand market, that's usually a good value thing. People talk about crash bars on these bikes a lot. I'm not convinced. A lot of them mount to the frame here, you know, using these mounts for the tank, and they come out and round and then mount somewhere down here. I've not used them personally. I've never had a problem hitting the plastic original ones. These are fairly flangeable and they flex a bit and whatnot. So crash bars to me are probably a bit more of a liability of catching stuff when they stick out quite a bit. So it's up to you. It's your own personal preference. At the end of the day, if you want crash bars, you can go all out and get ones which cover all this. But these plastics are, in the big scheme of things, relatively cheap to replace. You know, KTM are reasonably good for that. So you can grab them. Plus, there's usually a few stuck on eBay where you can grab 1 or 2. But these are the original ones I got on the bike, and they've been dropped 10 a penny, and they've never broke on me. So I'm not really worried too much about crash bars. One thing I will say is underneath here is obviously your fuel pump, and there's a fuel line which comes out. There is a billet aluminium cover there from Rottweiler, which I fitted fairly soon after I bought the bike, and also an aluminium spigot, I think it's called, which feeds the fuel into the pipe. They are plastic as standard, and they were known to break a little bit. So if you got a bad knock here, it might sometimes crack the plastic pipe. But a billet aluminium cover from Rottweiler and the aluminium spigot basically reinforces that. But I've never had a problem with that side of things. Protection wise on this side, still Vanache case cover. This is the original, and in my opinion, often copied but never equaled. Comes with all the proper fitments and a bush inside the plastic one, not unlike the Chinese versions. It also comes with your gear selector, sensor, switch gear cover as well. So that all comes as one thing. I like the black because it kind of hides it, and it's also collects a lot of dirt and stuff, and you can get in there and clean it really easily. So that's a probably must-have in my opinion. Rottweiler Transaver, optional. Obviously, you've got a linkage bar as standard in the 790, but this is really good for if you're like riding downhill and you're maybe off the front of the pegs, or you're trying to change down into first gear to slow down. If you step on the gear, it gives way, and therefore it doesn't go through your engine. It just takes the load off that. So that's something else which I fitted fairly soon on. But otherwise on this side, a few other things I've fitted. Obviously, bigger foot stand on the side stand, and also this is a little bit of grip tape. It's probably hard to see, but it's a piece of sort of vulcanized rubber that sticks to step ladders, just to provide an anti-slip thing. I forget the name of it, but someone I seen had done that, and it's a good tip to be able to kick your stand up with your toe if you need to get it. So that's there. Protection wise, obviously you can see these engine case covers. They came on the 890 engine, which I transplanted in. Not really my taste, but they were on it, so I just left them on it. Coming around the front, protection wise, up in radiator area, we have the power parts, aluminium radiator cover. This was an eBay second-hand purchase. I just saw it and bought it for fairly good money. I think they're about 90 quid each new, but I did it more for airflow. I thought the plastic one maybe wasn't letting enough air in, so I got that, more of a honeycomb shape. Matches the bash guard, looks well, so I just did that. Coming around this side, protection wise, again, standard covers on the tanks. There's nothing really in here. As we come down the side of the engine, you can see we've got another case thing. Again, I inherited that with the second-hand engine. And then we come on to the Rottweiler brake reservoir guard on the rear brake. This is absolutely solid. Early purchase for me. Does the job. Stops this being so vulnerable here. Never had anything hit it, but it's just peace of mind at the end of the day. Coming along here, you've got obviously your brake line and your ABS sensor wire. Excuse the dirt, I've been out in the road a wee bit. I would zip tie these. You can probably see there's a tie there and a tie there. Might not consider it necessary, but we have seen occasions where that cable's ended up on the tire, worn through the cable, and cut off your ABS and rendered the bike almost useless because everything cuts out. Then your traction control and etc. doesn't work. It's a bit of a bind to replace it because it goes all the way up to here, I think the plug is. So you've got to like route it all the way down. And I don't know what the price are. I've never had to replace one, but that's just a bit of preventative. And then coming back to here, we have the moto-minded ABS guard on the rear of the brake. Basically this cable, this cable here sometimes hangs out here. So you might catch a branch in it. I've seen a few people have ripped it off. So that was just peace of mind. It's a bit of 3D plastic, printed plastic, and it just tidies up that rear end as well, just keeps it from getting bashed. There are, they call them shark fins for the rear disc, which you can buy, which replace obviously your brake mount and things like that, but I've never had a problem with anything hitting the disc. So that's really most of the protection. Everything you've seen on the bike is preventative, really. I've never replaced it because it's actually broke, but it's all just been a case of I've seen people online have broke something and I've went, oh, maybe I should consider that. So that's where it's been. So basically we've got the bark busters, the bash guard, the radiator cover, we've got the engine covers, which obviously came on the second-hand engine. You've got things like the Vanash case saver, the trans saver, which is the gear lever strut, and on the other side we've got the brake reservoir protection and the rear cable protection. So those are the sort of things I've found. I've put them on preventative measures. I've never really had any problems on the road, but we'll talk about some of the problems I have had on the road maybe in another episode. But that's it. Hopefully it's short and sweet. Gives you an idea of what you can do. I would say if you're running a standard bash plate and you're planning to take your bike off-road, the first thing I would probably do would be the bash guard. Other than that, the only other real thing probably related to protection is the high mud guard. Standard KTM high mud guard kit for the 790R. Fits this model, no problem at all. Gives you obviously that mud clearance. With the low mud guard, I did used to have the Touratech risers, which rise the mud guard maybe, I think it rises at 10 or 15 mil. They were okay, but I was finding if it was in a muddy patch, it would fill up fairly quickly. So I thought, right, just stick with the R mud guard, and that way you're going to get the best of both worlds. I haven't noticed any difference in speed, even though the R has a sticker on it that says don't go over 100 mile an hour kind of thing. I've never noticed anything on it at all. Maybe the damper's helping out with that. Okay, right, I think that's that for protection. Next time around, we'll talk about something else. Thank you. Okay, where are we at? Right, we've just talked about the protection on the bike. I've just gone through some of the things that I fitted to it, mostly preventative, and mostly because I foresee there being a problem if I hit something with something. So we've done all of that, and in the next episode, we'll probably start looking at a few other things. But until then, like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Okay, ride safe, guys. Hello and welcome to the Project 7890. This is my 2019 KTM 790 Adventure. It has been modified quite extensively, and in this series of episodes I'm taking you through all of those modifications, and hopefully then it can help you make a decision for your 790 or 890 that you maybe just bought or have had for a while. This bike has also had an engine swap. There is an 890 Duke R engine fitted to this. If you haven't seen that series, I suggest that you then click on the card in this corner, and that'll take you to a 6-episode series where we explain everything we've done to the bike and why we did it, and also how much it cost. This series has a separate playlist. If you click again in this corner, it'll take you back to episode 1, where you can watch the last couple of episodes, and it'll take you through controls, protection, and on today's episode, we're looking at ergonomics and electronics. See what I did there? Okay, folks, so we're just talking about start with the electronics. Probably the best way to really do is actually probably start to talk about what I've got done to the front of the bike. The bike is basically standard at the front with regard to electronics. The Denelli lights that I do have are the S4 pods. These are a really good supplementary light if you need to light up the road a wee little bit. I prefer to have them on for basically safety, believe it or not. I don't really ride much at night, but when I do, these are superb, but they're more for attention grabbing when I'm out driving in traffic. I have had someone drive out in front of me and it wasn't a pleasant experience, but thankfully with these that seems to have reduced lately. Either that or I'm just being a lot more aware and cautious about when people are approaching. So electronics wise, that's the first thing. This is all linked into the CAN bus system, which I'll go through shortly. Obviously with KTMs, you get a lot of electronics standard as anything. This bike has got, I think it's what's known as the Tech Pack kit on it. When I bought it initially, I initially only bought the quick shifter electronics, but since then I've had cruise control, which wasn't standard switchgear wise back in the day, and I've had rally mode enabled and all. So that basically I've had the full tech pack. I know people think this is a subscription service or whatever, but it is just a one-off payment. It's always been the same. It's just the way KTM marketing packaged it recently. They give you a demo mode for, I think it's about 1,000 miles, 1,500 kilometers, and then you have to make a purchase, or you just option it in at the very start and you don't have to worry about the demo day. But basically it's a dealer fitted option, and it's a wee bit of extra money for the dealer, a bit of an upsell. Yeah, I think it's about £1,000 UK or a bit less than that. But I'm sure if you've got a good enough dealer, you can do a deal on that. Coming back from the main, obviously KTM electronics, you do have a Garmin sat nav. I run the XT. It's been out a few years now. It seems to do well. It shows tracks, so it's excellent for running the TET. And I do run additional maps on it, which take a wee bit of a while to come up. But I am basically running talkie toaster maps, and they work really well with the contours and the extra detail. So that's kind of what I run, and TET tracks just go straight onto it, or GPX files you can upload really easily through your phone. So that is the main front end of the bike. You'll also notice I don't run a lot of cables showing, so everything's kind of tucked in behind. You know, it's fitted in the places where KTM designed it to go in, and it's all hidden within the lights. I don't really like lots of wires at the front of a bike. Sometimes I see people, it gets really messy. I think my OCD gets triggered then. The only other electronics really I've got the front are an additional USB charger, which I spoke about in the controls. It's a single USB-C, or USB-A, sorry, I think it is, isn't it? What they call those, which basically runs my phone charger, and that's really all I have electronics wise. If I need to run anything else off it, it goes into the tank bag. Other things in this area, obviously you've got heated grips, sort of standard KTM stuff. This is prior to them being incorporated into the head unit, into the TFT display where the control comes up on a particular page. I'm not really convinced about that because there's another module involved underneath the tank. This is kind of quick and dirty. Expensive to replace though, because I've smashed a few of them, and the grips seem to last okay. That one's 5 years old, 35,000 miles on it. Throttle's okay. I do have a new fresh set to go on at some stage next year when they wear out. I'm coming back from there, obviously tank, and then we get towards the heart of the vehicle when it comes to electrics, obviously the battery. But before we get there, this is the Denali CanSmart, which is basically the Hexcan system. I think it's all made by Hexcan. Lots of people are making these now. But basically you can see there's an LED light on there. If you can see the green light. So it's basically connected to the battery, and it runs the sat nav, it runs the front lights, it runs the auxiliary power to the USB here, and it does have a spare socket which I can run extra electrics off. So it does have the ability to chop and change. You can control this by a computer. You can plug in your computer here, and you can set it up fuse size, so you can make it a 5 amp, 10 amp, etc. for each accessory, so it's protected in that respect. And if it does go pop, turn the bike off, turn it back on, it should work. But obviously you need to find the fault first. Other things, obviously ODP is actually part of this, because this plugs in through the canvas. So this umbilical here is actually from the CanSmart, but it all plugs in, works well, and it tucks in nicely behind the tank. I've got it kind of fitted here because it just seemed to fit well, and it keeps it out. But in here it gets dusty as anything when you're riding off road anyway, so you do need to clean stuff pretty regularly. Underneath the tank, I've got a couple of relays for the horn. I do have a Smart Bomb horn, which is a big tooter. I do like to have a big horn. Basically, it's just to make people aware when they drive out in front of me that I am here and I can shout at them with a horn. So that's all fitted down where the canister delete was. So it's sort of at the front of the tank on the right hand side where the canister used to be. It all fits in there. The only thing is I seem to melt them quite a lot because they're quite close to the headers. But battery, lithium ion on this one. The standard one I still have. It still works fine, but just the weight of it, I thought the Noco NLP 14, I think is the model I use. Lithium ion battery, it weighs about, it's featherweight. When you, for anybody who hasn't lifted one up, go into a retailer and see if you can get your hands on one and just feel the weight difference between that and your standard battery. It was bought mainly as a preventative measure because I'd heard bad things about the factory batteries just suddenly dying and people having lots of electronic problems with lots of red lights, etc. on the dash. By the way, that's a nice warning because it is so cold in here, hence why I'm wearing hats and gloves and things. So I basically bought it as a preventative measure when I went on one of my first Spain-Portuguese trips, or Spanish-Portuguese trips, and it was designed so that you know, these things are hopefully pretty robust. The only thing I've heard bad about lithium-ion batteries is that when they're cold, you do need to switch on the battery and let it sort of run the electronics for 2 or 3 minutes to let it warm up. I've never had a problem with that with this battery, and it's been in, well, you can see now it's plus 3 degrees in here. It's -2 outside at the moment. So this is something which has been really, really, really good for me. Starts on the button every time, and I've not had a problem with it failing or anything on me, and no funny lights. As we come back, the electronics get less and less, obviously, and that's the main bulk of it at the front. Obviously, we've got a charging dongle, or whatever you want to call it there, for the battery. It's got its own sort of independent charger, which it gets plugged into when it's parked. Rottweiler airbox, that's how it goes without saying. I do run an alarm on this bike, basically because of the UK has a bit of a reputation for bikes going missing. It's purely just to make noise and scare whoever tries to take the bike. If they do, fortunately, I'm pretty savvy with hopefully where I keep it and things like that, touch wood. I'll not try and jinx anything, but it is just a deterrent. It's not there designed to stop people taking it. If they want it, they'll take it. Here is a standard SAE connector. So I have that on the ACC2 connections, which are here at the back on the 790 and the 890. So that is basically to run a compressor. So that just connects straight up, turn on the ignition, turn on the engine, and run a compressor off it. So that's that. It just tucks down here in front of the power commander, so it keeps itself quite nice. The power commander, if you've watched the build series, you'll know that this bike was fitted with a power commander to go along with the Rottweiler airbox. This is all plumbed in correctly at the moment. It does have the ability to run 2 different maps, which are switched from a switch on the right hand side beside the throttle. At the moment, there are no maps on this at all. It's just running default zeros all throughout the rev range. That's something to do in the future. And then that really brings us to the back, where it's basically standard electronics. And that's really it from an electronics point of view. I don't need a bike with lots of bells and whistles and cameras and extra bits and bobs, especially with the right type of riding I like to do. It's basically just need a nav to get me to the place. There's people running big tablets now, DMD2 and things like that. And that's maybe something I do in the future if I want to do some roadbook stuff. But otherwise, all the electronics are basically standard KTM, a couple of plugs, sat nav, and some lights and a horn. That's really it. Everything else is just kept nice and simple. And it's best that way because nothing's, touch wood, has gone wrong yet. Okay, it's covered the electronics. We've got the seat back on. The seat may not be fitted correctly because there's a bit of a gap there. But basically on the 790 standard, it comes with a 2-piece seat. Because I'm such a short arse, not very tall and all that, I did have the seat shaved a little bit when I first bought the bike with a gel pad fitted to it. So that was done by Tom Hurley Seats, custom seats up in Livingston direction. Really comfy seat, but I desired a 1-piece seat. The standard R seat's a little bit higher, and this is the factory low seat. So as you can see, it's nice and low, just where you need it to be, and that suits me fine. I've been running this seat now for probably 3 years. 3-4 years maybe actually, and it's done the job. I do sometimes run a cool cover on it, which is the mesh, which helps a lot when it's raining because it takes the water away, because the water does pull here in your crotch whenever you're riding. But if you've got the cool cover on, the rain runs through it and runs off the bike, and also when it's really hot, you get a bit of airflow under your backside. So that's what I use on that. So that's the seat part of it taken care of. Handlebar wise, I'm quite fussy about handlebars. I always run my handlebars with the bend sort of parallel to the fork, and that's the way I've always done it. If it's even a millimeter out or a millimeter forward, I notice it, and it makes the bike feel funny to me. Speaking of setup of the bars, running the Vanache, as you can get the camera in here, the Vanache damper mount, which has 2 positions on it instead of the 3 positions on the factory crown. Mainly being because that rear position is used to bolt that mount to the actual crown itself. So I run it in the middle mount or the rear mount on the Vanache thing. I did have it on the closest to mount whenever I didn't have this damper fitted. And when I moved it forward, it felt a lot better. So I was quite happy with that. Bars wise, mainly lever preferences. That's all up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. But if you're interested in how I do it, because this bike is used as basically a road tour to get to trails, it's probably ridden on the road 80% of the time. And this is basically just designed for I'm comfortable on the road and can get to the brakes. If I wanted to, I can put them forward a little bit. But to be honest, I just set and forget, and they're very comfortable in that respect. When we come down to fork setup, I run the fork probably 5mm out of the top of the crowns. I think that's almost factory. We'll talk about suspension in another episode, but you can see there I do have cartridges fitted, so we can have a look at that in another episode, but we'll go through that. But basically that's what I run. I could run them lower to get the bike a little bit sort of front heavy and get a bit more grip in the front wheel, but there's not really much to play with because the bark buster here would foul the top cap, so I've just got to play it by ear. Obviously we've done the hands, the handlebars, the seat, now the feet for the ergos. Feet wise, I run Bosley pegs. You'll maybe have to Google them. He's been making sort of custom pegs for quite a few years now. These are stainless steel. They're standard size. They're just a wee bit longer. This was are wider, I should say, and wider that way than the standard KTM peg. But they aren't lowered, aren't raised, so I just kept them standard reach. And they work really, really well. Plenty of grip, really strong. You can see how well they're quite robustly constructed. I've hit them off many rocks and they've been dropped on several times. You just get a bit of Scotch-Brite out on it. Scotch-Brite fixes everything, KTM, as you know, and that sorts them out. But really, really good job. And in fact, they've eaten away one of the soles on one of my old boots so much I've had to buy new boots recently. Going from here to here, brake lever wise, Vanache 790 brake lever. Basically, it's designed so it's level. I like to be able to ride on my toes and then just dab the foot brake like that. So it's in the rear position. I've got size 6 feet. It is adjustable one. You can move it forward one hole. So basically that rear hole comes there. Really good wee foot stand, and actually quite wide when you look at it compared to the standard one, which is probably about that size. So that just gives you an idea of that. And I also run it almost on the stop. So it's right up. So it's basically level with my foot peg. So it's dead on when you're riding off-road. You just dab it. And then when you're riding on-road, you can just move your foot forward and tap it. So that's how I set that up. The other side may be a little bit trickier because of the stand, but I'll try and show you as best I can. This is the Vanache gear lever. This is pretty new out, so I thought I would get one. However, it's designed for lower pegs, so just be cautious if you do decide to get one. I tend to run, again, my pedals and my lever level, but this one is actually probably a little bit lower because I thought it was maybe impacting the gear, so I still got to play about with this. You'll have heard me mention some of the quick shifter things in the 890 build series. The quick shifter probably needs recalibrated, but that's still work to do. But at the moment, the temperatures are not letting me get out in the bike and play with it or adjust it. So that's something for a later date. But that basically brings the ergonomics to the end. I'm hoping some of that was actually quite helpful to you. If you have some suggestions that you think that might help me, being a short rider, let me know. I don't think I need bar risers. That's probably the last thing I need. I don't think I need lowered pegs. That's the last thing I probably need. But if you've got any tips that you think that short arse like myself might be able to use, then let me know. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. We've just gone through some of the ergonomics and the electronics I run on my bike. Some of that may be able to help you decide what you want to do. With a bike like this, I've tried to keep it as minimal as possible. I don't want to chuck a load of extra stuff on it that you may see on other bikes. It's dead basic. It just gets you to the trails and you can navigate on the trails. That's basically the end of it. Setting up wise, obviously, is a very, very individual preference. You will set up your bike completely different to the next man. I'm no different. All I'm doing is showing you what I've done. I'm a smaller rider, which is difficult at times because these bikes don't come in small, medium or large. This basically, you've got to make them fit you. So some of the tweaks I've done have all been to do with that. They've also been to do with the fact that where I'm taking the bike, I want to be able to do certain things and also, for example, maybe charge something in the tank bag while I'm riding along, but still be able to use my phone, etc. So a few things like that. I'm not really into like wireless stuff or anything like that because I think sometimes that can cause you more problems, and also it tends to be item specific. Ergonomics wise, it's all been stuff about preventative, be it stronger pedals, brake brake and gear levers, things like that. So just stuff which you need to bear in mind if you're taking your bike off-road. In the next few episodes, I'm probably going to start talking about what luggage systems I use. Bike has had panniers fitted to it, pannier racks, which I found useful. Some trips not so useful for others, and I'll go through that in the next few episodes. I've also got to talk about suspension. This bike's had a suspension, obviously upgraded since I've got it from you, so I'll go through that and tell you why I've done it and how I've done it. But other than that, if you've liked this video and you've stuck to the end, thank you. Click a like, click subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Hello again, and welcome back to the Project 7890. My name is John, and this is my 2019 KTM 790 adventure. In this series of episodes, we're talking about all the modifications I've done to this bike since new. And if you want to go back to episode 1, click on the card up in the corner. In this episode, we're going to talk about the luggage I use and how I've set it up and the mistakes I've made, things I've learned so that you don't have to. If you're interested in what I've done with regard to a luggage setup, stick around and we'll go through it shortly. Also, I'd like to remind you that this bike has had an engine swap. It now has a Duke 890R engine in it. If you're interested in watching the engine swap, there's also another series here. If you click there, take you right back, 6 episodes, takes you right through the engine swap. So if you're ready to go, we'll start packing our bags and we'll start talking about how I pack this thing up for trips. Okay folks, the first thing I just want to bring your attention to is this Krieger backpack. This was purchased about 20 odd years ago and it's still going strong. It's one of the first backpacks Krieger produced when they were a new company, and since then it's been a staple of my luggage system. I use this a lot locally, commuting, nipping into town, that kind of thing. So it's my go-to bag really for backpacks. Really comfortable. Love this quad lock harness, and it's one of the reasons why I've stuck with Krieger. They are a British company, obviously, so it's good to support some homegrown talent. And some of the stuff they've come up with lately, especially for adventure bikes, has been really, really good. So that's one of the main reasons why I use Krieger a lot. Going back to when I first purchased the bike, obviously you heard me talk about the Perron Moto rack. The main reason for buying that rack was because at the time, the Krieger OS system that was out was kind of geared up. So this is one of the first bags I bought. It's the Krieger OS 30 litres of basically a roll pack. It's not as robust on the outside. I wouldn't like to crash on it too much, but I'd say it would take a hit or two. But this was kind of my overnight bag, that kind of thing. Any kind of overnight trips, the stuff went in here, and it's worked really well. And on occasions, I'd still use it if I don't have that much stuff. I would say it's perfect for, you know, sticking maybe your tent and your sleeping bag in if you've got a fairly small packable tent. But 30 litres is deadly. So that's kind of one of the other bags. That can sit on the rear rack, or you can strap it to a seat. That's another thing I use. So that was one of the first couple of things I bought. Moving on to pannier racks. When the 790 came out in 2019, there was very little available for it. The only rack you could get was basically the KTM rack, which was a stainless steel kind of Touratech affair by the looks of it. This is the Outback Motortech one, so I waited patiently for this to become available. It's basically made out of steel. It's actually quite lightweight. This one I've retrofitted a Givey toolbox into because they are symmetrical racks. So they sit either side of the bike quite wide, but it does give you the option to have a tool box stuck in there. So that's with the cross thing. The other feature about these racks is, if I bring it a bit closer, is they have these slots, which were basically what Krieger bags bolt into, strap into, I should say. So basically what happens is they click in and they fit basically straight on this rack. And it's quite ironic that Krieger are now one of the main distributors for Outback Motortech within the UK now. But really good rack, good and light. It's been dropped a few times. You just paint it back black again and it tidies it up. As I said, on the bag front, to go with those, I've used the Krieger OS 32s. These are quite massive. The way you can tell, obviously, the 32s, 3 dots on the side. I'm not quite sure the side. I think they may have a 35 out now for the GS boys. But when these are fitted to those racks, you need a wide load badge on the bike. It is quite noticeably wide. I'll stick a picture in here somewhere with it out in Portugal. I've used these on one TET trip in Spain and Portugal, and they were quite heavy. I probably packed too much, but this is kind of part of the reason why I'm going through this, just to let you guys know what I've used and what mistakes I've made. So with 232s on the back, you're talking 64 litres of luggage. I'm a wee bit less than that these days, or about the same, but packed differently. But the more we have, the more stuff you put in. You'll have seen lots of articles about how to pack and things like that. But these would be used, I would say, if I was going on a road-only Alps trip, where I was maybe staying in hotels or even camping. You could put enough camping kit in this to do you for a couple of weeks in the Alps. But yeah, again, I wouldn't probably take them on an off-road trip, especially on a wide load pannier. But if needs must, then you would take it. You would survive, but it wouldn't be ideal. So that was my pannier setup for a while. Obviously, with the advent of rackless systems, Moscow Moto over the back of the seat style things, Krieger did come up. They did have a modular package at the time. You had the OS 6s, 12s, and 18s, which are, I used one as a tail pack, but then they brought out the OS system, which went over the back of the seat, and I migrated more towards that. So this is basically what the OS system is. I forget what it's called, rackless system. It's basically a rack, goes over the back of the seat, works really well with a couple of 12s. These are OS 12s, and they're a lot more, they've got that kind of super strong material on the outside, really, really good. And I've dropped the bike on these so many times, and the only thing that's broken is the little clips that retain the cables. So some of them have cracked when I've whacked a bush or hit the ground. So that's a really, really good system. I'd recommend that to anybody. And the fact is that it just straps on and it comes off in seconds. You literally ping a couple of straps, and before you know it, you're carrying it up into your hotel room or leaving it on the bike while you're camping. These bags are really good. Dry bags, of course. If you need to see anything, just go on the Krieger website. I'll put a link below. I can fit my tent in here with a few other bits and bobs. And this tends to be my go-to sort of setup for maybe a weekend away. I'll throw everything into this, and I can travel pretty light. I've also used it off-road in the TET in Spain, and it's been brilliant out there. It didn't get in the way. It was perfect for that, and just was rock solid on the bike. So yeah, thoroughly recommend that. If you're doing any kind of stuff where you want your stuff looked after and, you know, plenty of protection. Totally waterproof as well. This has been through monsoon rains in Spain sometimes. It's come away bone dry, but really, really recommend that. Other stuff, staying on the Krieger theme. I'm not really one for wearing water bladders or anything, so I've always had to carry water with me. But this is just a wee Krieger water pack. It's still got water in there. A couple of snug bottles. You can stick fuel or anything in there, which would be perfect if you're going camping. But that's really handy, especially in hot countries. You've got a couple of litres of water just ready to go. So that's something else that I would recommend. Main tail pack these days is the OS 40. This is basically a massive duffel bag, which has got an opening on both ends. As you can see, it's really light, but it does have some extra strength on top. Loads of straps to strap stuff onto. You can put tent poles down here. You can put extra stuff on top of it. You can strap the OS packs to it. So sometimes I'll run that with a couple of packs on top, and then that's strapped to the back rack. It does roll up, can roll up pretty small, so I think you can go down to 28 litres, and then it obviously has a wrap around, kind of beaver tail style, which seems to be all the rage these days. And it's super strong, straps really well, and I've never had a problem with that, even working loose. So I would thoroughly recommend one of them as well. So obviously the de Rigueur T18 backpack. I don't really use a backpack much, this one especially. I tend to use it for if I'm going to pick something up and I want it to stay dry, because there's a good dry bag in it. I don't use the bladder at all in it. I'm not really a fan of bladders. So it's been stripped out and it's basically used as a, if I need to throw gloves and stuff on it, sometimes I run it across the back like that, more for an option to have a little bit of extra storage, but also have the ability to maybe use a backpack. So sometimes it goes on there on bigger trips, but it's not used as much as maybe some of the other stuff. Speaking of OS packs, that's an OS 6. That's kind of my daily driver. It's got like tools and first aid kit in it and gloves. So it tends to stay on the bike and goes with me everywhere, so that tends to be that. And then that's basically all the Krieger luggage done. So we've had a look at the racks. As I said, they're a pretty wide load. You'll see some of the pictures I'll include as we've been talking through this. It's a wide load, holds a load, but keeps the weight fairly low down because the racks do sit fairly low on the bike. It's probably worthwhile showing you. The racks are sitting there. These are quite good because these ones actually protect your exhaust as well. So, and the bike doesn't look bad with them. So it's just the fact that as soon as you put a bag on, it's quite a wide load. Okay, onto tank bags. The first tank bag I bought was basically, I think this is a Sandstone 4X Endurostan. Endurostan, obviously, Lyndon Poskett's pretty well known for using that. It's a really small tank bag. This is kind of my, again, a daily driver. This is the one if I'm just going out for the day, I tend to throw stuff in it. Glasses, cases, and a few bits and bobs. Nothing really, it's just to keep my purse really. But fully waterproof, clips off handy enough, and you can sort of clip it back on itself to carry it if you need to. It's been a good job. I've had no problems with that. Never really done any really big trips with it. I tend to use a bigger one because I like to carry a camera with me at times. So that's one tank bag. The next tank bag is the big beast. This one was bought solely for going to, doing big European trips. So the idea behind it was that I wanted a tank bag that my camera could fit in. I wanted a waterproof one. I didn't want one to have to take a cover out, but I also wanted the ability to run a cable. So this is the Giant Loop Fandango, I think it's called. I'll find out on the inside. Comes with a base that straps to the bike, and you zip it off and tilt it over so that you can get at your fuel cap. And when I open it, I got some additional dividers in it from the guys at 790 ADVR. They developed some camera bag style pouches for the inside of it, so you can have a look there. So basically SLR sits in here, and virtually everything there, TED stickers, and you've got room for batteries and things like that. So that's all kind of velcroed in there, and it fits really well. It's well dusted, needs to get clean. And then you've got obviously your usual cable stuff, but you also have a kind of a map pocket as well. The only problem with these are they're quite pricey. I think these are nearly over 200 quid if you get them, but I think there's a UK distributor now, so it's a bit easier to get your hands on one. So that's my tank bag. I think I've went through virtually all the things I've got. Basically, I've tried out most of the Krieger stuff, as you can see. I recommend Krieger stuff, but no affiliate with them. I just like it. Those guys at Krieger have been really good. If I've broken anything or had a problem, a quick phone call and they can sort you out with spare parts and things like that. And they've been really good in that respect. They seem to support the whole ADV scene by going to shows and stuff like that. So they always have a good presence at that. With regard to the Giant Loop bag, that's kind of one of the biggest tank bags you can get that doesn't get in your way. I've been standing up off-road on it. You don't even notice it's there. And you treat it as a shelf as you're riding along. The little tank bag, perfect for day-to-day stuff. And other than that, that's really the luggage systems I use. The biggest mistake I've done, and probably all of us will do, is overpack. All I can say is pack once, take it all out again, pack again, throw away. No, that's not essential. And you will find when you're traveling, the best thing you can do is buy a dry bag and some liquid soap to wash clothes, because when you stop, you can do that in the sink at the bathroom, hang it up, and it's done. And you don't need 15 pairs of underpants for every day, you know what I mean? You need 4 or 5 pairs to get you through a couple of days till you get stuff washed. And then you can take it from there. But you guys will do your own thing. You guys will know what to do. But hopefully for those who are new to the 790 platform, you'll see the options you have. You're absolutely spoilt for choice with the 790, 890 model now, because there's so many systems out there. There's so many guys, Far Eastern stuff, Chinese stuff that's been coming out that's actually looks quite reasonable, and it's quite reasonably priced as well. If you want to go for the high-end stuff like Moscow Moto, you're spoiled for choice there. You've got some cracker bits of kit. Some of my friends have been using that when I've been following, and it hardly even moves when they're off-road. And it's really robust as well. They're built like tanks, and you'll pay for it. Unfortunately, they're quite expensive systems. But then, when you look at the amount of stuff I've bought, even though I've tried panniers, didn't get on with them, and then I've went to the rackless system with the Krieger, it definitely is. I'm more favourite of the rackless stuff. It's just more streamlined on the bike as well. So there you go. Anyway, I hope that was useful to you. In the next episode, we're probably going to go back on the bike and look at some of the suspension changes I've moved. But until then, thanks for watching. And if you haven't done so already, please click the subscribe button, please click the like button. But in the meantime, stay safe and keep riding. Hi and welcome back to the Project 7890. In this episode we're talking about suspension that I've modified on my bike. This bike, as you may or may not know, is a 2019 790 Adventure. It has numerous modifications which we've detailed through this series of episodes. If you haven't seen this series of episodes, click on this link up here and that'll take you back to a playlist where you can watch them all. This bike's also had an engine swap. There's an 890 Duke R engine in it. If you want to see that engine swap, click up here now. And that'll take you to the playlist that details all the details of that and how we got it done in the end. But in this episode, we're concentrating on the suspension changes I've made, why I've made them, and how they feel. Okay, just to give you some background into the bike, obviously the bike came standard with Apex suspension, 200mm of travel. On the forks, there's non-adjustable cartridges, which are basically an oil bath cartridge. Well, that means that the cartridge is inside the fork in a bath of oil at the bottom of the fork, and as it compresses, it squeezes the oil up through the cartridge, and that's what controls your dampen, both rebound and compression. No adjustment, no preload, no nothing. It's as you get it from the factory. And to be fair, it was fine. Once it got taken off road, I did notice the limitations of it. If you braked harshly, it would dive. If you hit a rough patch, it would pack up a little bit. So you needed a bit more control of it. And that's when I came back from that trip, I decided that the next upgrade I was going to do to my forks was going to be an internal cartridge. How I went to make a decision on that, I'll go through in a moment. The Apex rear shock that comes on the 790, again, 200mm travel at the rear. Preload only adjustment, no manual preload had to be done with a ring spanner. Not the most refined shock there's going, but did the job again. But unfortunately this one blew after 2 days of TET in Spain, and I had to basically not cut a trip short, but I ended up riding mostly tarmac towards the latter half of that trip, and I couldn't get a replacement shock sent out in time. So I can maybe go through the story of what happened with that shock, but first we'll go back to the forks. So, I just happened to have a set I prepared earlier. This is a set of forks that came originally on the bike. I was involved in a road traffic accident, or collision as they call them these days, and these were deemed maybe not fit to go back on the bike. However, I don't know if it was a precautionary thing. I've not had them checked, but I've kept them for spares in case you ever need an upper tube or a lower tube that's maybe not bent. It looks fairly straight to me, or it needs a fork leg, and as you can see there's a little bit of damage there. But these are radial mounted brakes, 43mm stanchions, SKF seals on them from the factory, and a decent fork. It worked well. However, as I say, a little bit harsh in the rough stuff, but did the job okay. So I've got a cartridge here actually for you that came out of my other forks. So let me just show you what's actually inside these. Unfortunately, I can't get what I replaced it out because it's a bit of an awkward job. These are the Apex cartridges. As you can tell, it's just a dampen rod, a couple of holes at the bottom and the top to move the oil about. I know you can hear it. You can hear it's pumping the air through there. This bit's plastic. Obviously there's a spring shrouding this. So that slides up and down inside the spring. Boom, boom, that's done. No adjustment. And all you can do is change the weight of the oil and change the spring to modify it to suit yourself. So not really very adjustable. What I did go for in the end was the Ergonomics rally cartridges. They are a direct replacement for the standard AP or WP cartridges, and they have independent rebound and compression on the left and right legs. They also have preload, so there's a lot more adjustability in them. And they are also an open bath cartridge, so the oil sits in the actual fork and is passed through the cartridge. You can get closed cartridges from the likes of Tractive. The decision I went for the open cartridges was that for ease of servicing, I didn't have to send the forks away, although I probably will with these, to be honest. Don't want to get my hands dirty. The fact that the cartridges are a charged gas cartridge, it means that they're kind of not really equipped for home servicing, so therefore the only oil that's in it is really for lubrication. The oil doesn't pass through the cartridge that's in the fork, and therefore to change your oil, it's easier to do it on an open cartridge. That's one of the reasons why I went for the open cartridge system. I'll get some close-ups with the phone now, just give you an idea of what they look like. From the outside, there's very little difference. Okay, so we're onto the forks here. So as you can see, the top of the forks is a lot different from the standard fork, which is obviously here, no adjustments. Whereas on the Ergonomics rally cartridges, you can see there, the top cap is quite a piece of meat. They're nicely finished, labelled with rebound. If I can get zoomed in here in my camera. So you can see this is the right leg. So this has got rebound and obviously preload. So preload's the big nut on the outside. The rebound is on the inside. It's a 3mm Allen key and it's easily reached from above if it wasn't for the bark busters. And again, you've got a bleed valve there as well. Pins for the spanner to get the top cap off. And it's the same on the compression side. You've got nicely laid out there, and again, just the same setup, except that side's compression. So that just gives you an idea of what they're like fitted. You hardly even notice they're there. Obviously, TW have put their sticker kit on it, and you know there's been something tweaked on it because it's been done. The bike rides really well, road on and off-road. Suspension's never worried me at all since I've had it done. Really, really good. I've put some pictures up, the internals, so you can see that they look like a goldy kind of cartridge colour. Not that you'll ever see that, but it just gives you an idea that Ergonomics are quite a well-respected Italian company throughout motocross, mountain bikes. That gives you an idea of what they can do for you. That's the cartridges in the forks, just showing you around what's been done. They were all fitted by TW Suspension down in Preston. They were really good. The chap that owns it talked me through all the changes and what he could do for me. So the forks went off to him, he fitted them for me, set them up for my weight and the way I ride the bike, and they've come back, and to be honest, they've been faultless since. Setup wise was quite easy. I just basically set everything to the middle setting, i.e. there's 4 full turns, so I just went back half, 2 full turns, and then rode it and got to the stage where I felt like that's happy. So it's had a tweak here and there. I've got it written down somewhere, but everybody's different. I've kind of set it up to the way I like it, and it seems to ride fine. It's got a really good platform on braking on the road and off-road. If you pull the brake, there's very little dive. It seems to just nicely firm up on you, especially with the compression as well. There is no high speed, low speed, it is just compression, so it's just whatever it ramps up at. It does seem to take the hits quite well, so I've hit some choppy stuff fairly fast and it works well. So I'm really pleased with the way the cartridges have turned out, and to be honest, the forks have been faultless since I've got them done. Let me just move these out of the way. The rear shock, as I mentioned earlier on, blew a seal in fact, you can probably still see the oil on it. If I put that up to you, you can still see the bump stops, pretty manky, and there's quite a lot of oil lying on it. At the time, when I went to a dealer in Portugal, they told me that these were a non-serviceable item. I couldn't get a replacement. KTM had none in stock, so we couldn't get one shipped out. So what I tried to do was get a shock, a K-Tech shock shipped from the UK. Unfortunately, it didn't turn up in time, so I had to abandon it, give it up as a bad job, and ride home on a pogo stick. So that got me the motivation to change the shock. The KTM shocks are pretty expensive. They're probably circa £800, £900 retail at the time. Last time I looked. And as I said, nobody's told me I can service these yet, although I've never checked because I went straight in and bought an aftermarket one. This was one I got off eBay. Allegedly, it's only done 1,500 miles on a 790, and it cost me 69 quid. So that was a good bargain. But however, I still wanted the performance of an adjustable shock. So that's when I went and started finding out about what I can get for the 790. So the 790, when it comes to rear shock, at the time there was a pretty limited choice. You had maybe a Hyper Pro with a remote reservoir on a hose. You had obviously the WP options, which are hell of expensive when you look into it, especially if you're going to go for an Explorer rear with a what do you call it, with a shortened shaft on it, so it could maintain the ride height. But that's really what I was looking for. I was looking to maintain the ride height. Didn't want a taller bike. I wanted to have good shock performance. So it really only brought me down to one option, and that was tractive. So this is fitted with a tractive shock. I'll get you some phone shots in a minute and show you around it what it does. But basically, it's piggyback reservoir. It's got high low speed compression, and it's got a rebound as well as remote preload. So you can dial the preload in as well. Really nice shock. And for those of you who are wondering about the history of Tractive, if you go onto Tractive's website, you can read about the history and where they came from. But basically, there's a reason they're probably orange anodized. WP, which was white power suspension, Wimpeders, if you want to be correct, obviously were bought out by KTM in the early 2000s, or I think it was actually the latter half of the last century. God, that sounds so old. They then basically took the company to Austria to be in Matterhofen alongside the main factory, and the guys who didn't want to move basically set up Tractive suspension. So the technology in there is from the start of white power WP suspension, so it's all very closely related. This shock is quite expensive. However, when you compare it to the price of a standard KTM Apex shock, it was kind of reasonably acceptable to upgrade. So that's why I went for it. But I'll take you through to it and just show you a quick shot of it in the bike with the phone. Okay, going on to the rear shock. I'll see if I can get in amongst the bracketry here that holds the thing. This is the Tractive shock. You can see there the preload handle, and if you look in, you'll be able to see the dials and the reservoir, which is tucked in there. I'll go around the other side and actually have a look. But as you can see, it has the white spring, which is synonymous with white power and WP suspension. To be honest, that's where I believe it came from. And you can see then it's got the collar on the shaft there. So everything is really tidy, really well finished. And don't forget, this has done a few winters with salt and all sorts on the road. You can still see there's a wee bit of dirt in from the weekend when I was out, but you can see there as you go up in, and you can see how well finished the barrel is. The adjusters all lovely black anodized, and you can just about see the adjusters there tucked in behind the frame, and that's your high and low speed compression. Rebound is pretty simple to get at. It is at the top of the rear mount. The newer shocks have the rebound on this side, and they've obviously moved it around. I think that's probably because that gets covered in dirt a lot, but as you can see, if I can squeeze in there, it's looking in pretty good nick, considering it's been on the bike two and a half years now, almost nearly 3 years. So this shock is, I think it's called the Tractive Extreme. It's proper standard fit for the KTM 790 Adventure S model. You can get longer versions and shorter versions. So if you want to lower your bike, you can get I think I've seen minus 25 mil. So you can drop this down to like an 805 seat height on a 790 Adventure, or an 815 if you've got the new style seat on the latest models of the 890. So it gives you a few options, and also you can get replacements for the Adventure R as well. So you can basically get this up to Adventure R spec height wise if you wanted to. Because if anybody knows that the Adventure R forks are straight fit into these crowns as well, so everything fits. So that's really it from a suspension point of view. if you need to know anything or want to ask any questions, put something in the comment. I'm quite happy to answer them. I didn't get a chance to try the K-Tech suspension, but that would have been sort of probably my first choice if the K-Tech had arrived in Portugal when I was out there. But I ended up with a Tractive, and I've been very, very happy with it. Okay, guys, thanks again for clicking on the video. That's it briefly for what I've done to the suspension to the bike. There's not really much to it. It's bolted on. It's a single pivot rear end on it. There's no complicated linkage. It bolts straight in. The tuners can set up your shock to your weight. If you're taking a load, when you think about it, these bikes are probably taking circa 220 plus 80 plus 20. So they're probably taking about 320 kilograms through the forks on sprung weight. It just gives you an idea of how robust these forks have to be. After coming from a mountain biking background where I've been racing downhill for a few years, I've been always interested in compression and rebound and how to control the speed of the fork. So that's something which obviously, that's where my head's at when I'm riding. I can feel certain things on the bike when you're off-road. The forks on this or the suspension on any of these bikes is always going to be a compromise because of that weight. So you've got to really think about how you're going to go about doing it. And if you are riding off-road, then you've also got to consider the bit when you're on the road. Because one, you want it to be safe, and you don't want it to be bottoming out with like quite light, soft, plush suspension. You want it probably a bit firmer so you can hand hit stuff hard. You know, that kind of high-speed compression working through, especially the rear shock when you maybe going light on the front through stuff. But I've had no problems with this riding some rocky stuff. The biggest limitation has always been the rider, not the bike. And I've got it to a stage now where I'm confident that, you know, no matter what where I go to, the bike will not be the problem. It'll always be me. So there you have it. So I think that kind of finishes the series on the modifications. The bike has now done on this engine swap about 650 miles. The next plans for the bike will be just like kind of a few checks on it. Plan to do some oil changes. I might even do an oil analysis just to see if there's anything going on inside the engine. So that might be quite interesting to stick around and see what I do with that. I also have a clutch pack to fit to it. So there's stuff I want to do to the bike. I also want to get rid of some of the anodizing stuff. This oil cap is a pain to get out and things like that. So maybe in the next video I'll do some servicing. We'll maybe strip the bike again, tank off kind of thing, and have a look around it. I want to check in case there's any oil leaks as well. Although the oil level has not shifted since the bike's been built. So that's probably the next thing. So over the next few weeks I'll try and get a service done on it. I've also got to get the dyno organised, and I'm going to try and get out and ride a bit more. But the weather's just a bit topsy-turvy at the minute. It's not great weather. I was out last week for a quick run, but I didn't video anything. I'm still trying to get the bike kind of running almost. So that'll be the next thing I'll be doing. So if you've enjoyed this video, stick around. We'll maybe see you on the next one. Thanks now. Over and out.